Welcome to Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. With Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks, Bryan Cush from Sawdust Bureau, and Robin Lewis from RobinLewisMakes. Hi everyone, I hope you're all very well. This is episode 30, Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast. As always, I want to start by introducing my two co-hosts. Joey, how are you?
Very good, Robin. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. And Bryan, how's it going?
I'm good, Robin. How are you?
It's good. I'm good. My name is Robin Lewis. Welcome to the show, everyone. So today it's just gonna be the three of us chatting. And what we want to do is, in the future, sometime, we want to put together a bit of a social media, YouTube, Instagram oriented episode. And we sort of toyed with a couple of our topic ideas, and we didn't really have a good one to settle on. So we thought what we'd do instead is put out to all of you guys who are listening to the show, because we know that a lot of you are on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. Do you have any questions for us? Because obviously we're all, that's very much part of our day-to-day. We're all, I'd say we are more prevalent in different platforms, so we've got a wide array of experience. If you guys have got any questions, send them to us. I'm sure everyone knows us on our different personal accounts. So, I'm RobinLewisMakes. Bryan, you're just Sawdust Bureau, right?
Yep, Sawdust Bureau.
Sawdust Bureau, and then Joey is King Post Timberworks. Instagram or Facebook, send us a message. Any questions that you've got, anything that you're a little bit unsure about or you just want some advice on, we'd be happy to weigh in our 2 cents. And I think we'll just make an episode out of that.
Yeah, and just don't message me on Facebook. You'll not get a reply.
It's funny. I think that's going to be it's probably going to be part of the show, is talking about Facebook and its role in social media today.
Sure.
So probably Instagram, even YouTube. I get messages every now and then on YouTube. So Instagram's probably the one though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So send us your questions, and if we get enough, we'll make a whole episode out of it. If not, we'll just try and slot them in here and there in the future. All right, now back to tonight's show. It is the 13th of August, and it is a very different scene out there compared to what we were seeing a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So,
Joey, I think you're probably the most recent casualty to COVID.
Yeah, everyone's calling it lockdown 2 or V2 or whatever you want to say. We're not actually in strict lockdown yet. As of tonight, we're still in level 3, so that means I can still go to work, which is good. I can still get materials, which is a little trickier, but can be done. Problem is, I can't go to clients' houses to drop off the stuff. And at the moment, I've actually got 3 or 4 standalone pieces I'm working on of various degrees of goodness.
Sorry, why can't you go to their house? Surely if you're social distancing.
Not allowed to break like household bubbles, is how I understand it to be.
Right.
So I couldn't go into someone's house. And so for freestanding things, I could probably drop off pieces to a garage or the front door. Depends if there's hands available to shift it into the house. And even for me, at least one of the pieces I can't really safely lift without damaging the sideboard. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. I think I'm just going to try and take a bunch of pictures and take like 90% of the payment and then leave 10% on it until I can actually drop it off. That seems to be the only kind of thing I can think of at the moment.
But as you say, if it's going to level 4,
if we go
soon,
to level 4, which could be tomorrow or Saturday, and that probably will be for 2 weeks minimum, then no one's doing any work anyway, which is a pain in the butt again. So who was I saying this to? Someone. So last time the government paid everyone out. Everyone who was eligible got paid out for like 12 weeks of what they was the same as like maternity leave if you were in that position. So it equated to around, for a full-time employee, it was about $7,000 everyone who was entitled got for that 12 weeks. And we were able to save and kind of move money around, and we kind of allocated all that money for our business overheads instead of taking it as drawings to buy food and stuff. We did what we could to keep that money aside for the business, to keep the lights on, so to speak. Last week that just ran out, so we're like right at the point where we get coming into another lockdown. We're going back to having, not so much money kicking about to keep the lights on, so it's a pain in the ass. So we'll see what happens, but yeah,
tough times.
Yeah, I think as long as if we can stick at level 3, I think it's probably best for everyone all round. People can still work, and people like today talking to the truck drivers and stuff. No one's on the roads. The city's pretty desolate. Most people got the idea of staying at home, which is great. And if people can work from home and be allowed to travel to their workplaces and work safely, then I think that's got to be the best kind of compromise, rather than just straight up stuck in your house. But I guess it gets to a point like where you are, Brian, where the caseloads and whatever, they decide that no one can go to work.
So we've obviously had it a bit different from you. Like, we sort of saw what was coming and watched it unfold over a period of about a week.
That's true.
Probably 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously we don't want to turn this into a political thing, but the messaging, especially based around sole traders, which I'd say probably the majority of furniture makers are sole traders, or maybe one other apprentice or something, I would say. The mixed messaging around that has been really stressful to deal with. So an announcement comes saying sole traders are excluded from the restrictions, and they can still be in their place of work so long as they don't have contact with anybody. You just need to print out this permit to allow yourself to travel, show it to the police, army, whoever's doing checkpoints, and you'll get through. And then in the middle of the night, they changed that form and just excluded the bit about sole traders with no announcement, no media, no nothing. And I just found out from a group of other furniture makers. They're like, "Is this the form that you downloaded?" I'm like, "No, that's not the form I downloaded."
So have you got the one with the right?
I've got the one that says sole traders are exempt so long as you don't have contact with anybody.
But could you try and use that one, seeing as it's an official document?
Well, I might not incriminate myself on this podcast, right. But it has just been really mixed messaging, as opposed to, the first stage 4. Did you call it stage 4 or stage 3 lockdown? Stage 4 when Auckland went, or when the whole of New Zealand went shut down.
It was
stage 4. Yeah.
For 5 weeks.
So your stage 4 was very different from our stage 4 because certain businesses are still allowed to trade.
Right.
So if you can associate yourself with construction, but it's this massive grey area of if you make vanities and bench tops and things, is that enough associated with construction? They have a loophole to allow metal workers to still work for some reason, and people have phoned up DHHS to confirm, if I make metal furniture, is that okay? And they get the answer of, well, you can't make metal tables, but you can make metal beds. It is the most... apparently,
that means that someone sat down and actually thought about,
they've
all these
tried
little
to.
minute differences where there should be a bit more overreaching, you would think.
Exactly. They should they should have really shut down everything. But this is the way that our government have chosen to do it, and we've just got to deal with it. So for the first few days, I was like, okay, it's fine, I can keep working. So I went to the timber yard, bought a couple of grand's worth of timber, and I was like, right, I'll focus on doing star map tables. And then delivered one on the Wednesday afternoon, and then Thursday I found out that I can't be in the workshop anymore.
Oh my god.
And it was zero notice. It was like Thursday morning I found out that this document had changed, and I'm like, right, well, what do I do now? So I glued up as many blanks for those tables as possible,
to bring them home.
To bring them home. So I'm now I've got enough for 6 tables, and I've got my workbench set up in the back garden.
Sweet.
I've got the shaper going, and that's pretty much all I can do. But
That's
I'm
actually
doing
a perfect tool for where you're at. Like a handheld portable CNC is going to be about the best thing for your situation.
Yeah, and I was actually lucky enough to get hold of one of the shaper workstations that they've just released.
Oh wow.
So there is actually a lot more that I can do at home that I didn't think I could do.
Awesome.
Obviously, there's going to be issues with noise.
Yeah, well, no, because you're in an apartment.
I'm not in an apartment, but I'm in a pretty tight residential block.
Yeah.
And everybody's working from home.
Yeah, true.
So
yeah, but you're working from home too.
yes, I know. I know. Direct all noise complaints to Dan Andrews at vic.gov.au is what I'm advising. But
It's quite funny you talk about that. A router outside the local park that I've got around the corner from me. There's a house next to it with no fence around it, and there was a guy at the front the other morning routing, and the noise emanating from this throughout the whole neighborhood, the park, everything. It was just so incredibly loud. Across the road from me, someone's been using either a power planer or a thicknesser. So loud, so incredibly loud, and I get very nervous about it because obviously working underneath my house in a residential area, I'm very nervous. But I've gone to some serious extents to try and keep that noise in, and it was only when I heard it from my house, 3 houses down the road, that I thought, I'm fine. Like, these guys, it's so incredibly loud.
Yep.
The noise that I'm making is nothing compared to that.
It's such a tricky one because, I've got a building site on one side of my house. So they're making roughly as much noise as I've been making, but they're doing it with permits, whereas I obviously can't operate a commercial workshop from my backyard, but I kind of feel as though I've been left with no choice.
Well, surely you're allowed to be a hobbyist woodworker in your backyard.
Maybe a hobbyist woodworker, yeah. But
you can make as many coffee tables as you like as a hobbyist.
Where does that legal line sit?
I don't think there is one.
Pretty blurry.
Yeah.
If you have a registered business to your home address, then surely that's it.
I have to. My business is registered to my home address because my workshop doesn't have an address.
Right.
It's just a point on a map. But this is like, I'm trying to make the most of it and do what I can. This is where we've ended up. We are still being supported financially by the government until March.
Next March.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's pretty good.
They've obviously done their modelling and they know that this is going to run and run. Yeah. The support was due to drop in September, and it's just a nationwide thing at the minute, the JobKeeper. So it's due to drop in September. I don't know whether they're going to try to get exemption for Victoria, but they just keep rolling out business grants that exclude sole traders. So it's a bit shit then when you're told that as a sole trader that you work by yourself, that you can't work because of risk of spreading the virus. And I'm like, I kind of understand it, but I can, with a trade card, I can go and walk into Bunnings and buy whatever I want for my home renovation or whatever. I can walk down the street, buy a coffee. I can walk to the florist, buy flowers. Like, it feels as though it's very mixed messaging. And there's a lot of confusion out there. I do know some people that are still working, and they find a great loophole that coffin makers can continue.
Cool.
So
how depressing is that?
Yeah, it's pretty depressing. So a friend of mine who will remain nameless, but he knows who he is, has made up a beautiful plywood coffin in his workshop, so that if he gets a knock on the door from the police, it's going to be like, here's my coffin. He's making a sign for the front of his workshop saying, directly supplies construction industry, coffin maker. And
metal work on the side.
What the hell can they do?
Oh my God!
Like,
that's
if you're
crazy.
gonna create weird loopholes,
Yeah,
people are gonna
people-
do it to stay
absolutely.
alive. And
But
Yeah.
do you get the feeling, Brian, being then in Victoria, that they are actively policing it?
I don't know. I know I have heard in some industrial estates that there have been door knocks.
Right.
Where I am is not really an industrial estate, so
They don't know how to get
Like-
to you because there's no address.
like there's no address and there's no public road that links
Yeah.
them. Like, you got to come through gates. So I don't know. It's just a bit of a mess at the minute. But 4.5 weeks to go, and we'll just see what happens. I expect that stage 3 will probably go on for the rest of this year, pretty much.
Yeah.
But unless you're gonna let sole traders work, you're gonna destroy a lot of the big sector of the economy.
Yeah, I must say, just while we're on COVID, this last kind of lockdowny thing for us, everyone got like an emergency message on our cell phones. The government puts out an emergency thing, Bob, and that went out at something like 10 o'clock at night. And I just got into bed and I heard it go off, and I was like, I'm having sleep before I work out what the hell is going on. Like, if it's the end of the world, I'll get a night's sleep first. So that morning I had to race into the city and collect some tools from a job site. But midday was the cut-off for the lockdown. So everyone had half a day. Mm-hmm. And my God, Auckland City just exploded with people buying up anything they could. Like, it was outrageous.
Yeah.
I had to drop into Bunnings on the way to my job site to pick up a tube of No More Gaps, of coloured No More Gaps, which I didn't have any of. And the place, people were buying trolleyfuls of 10-litre pails of paint and just like grabbing stuff like it was the end of the world. It was just like, what are you people doing? Like, just crazy panic buying in a hardware store.
It's kind of funny because I think it's that we've sort of eased into, well, you don't really want to say easing into where we are, but it's been a gradual decline in Melbourne, and I think people are fatigued by it, but they now accept the reality of it. So when stage 4 got announced, I didn't see any panic buying at all. The supermarkets were all pretty quiet. Bunnings now, well, all trade, like timber yards are still open.
Right.
Some are saying you're only allowed to come if you're within a 5k radius.
Oh God.
If you're not trade, it's got to be contactless. If you are trade, some will let you into the timber yards.
Right.
But no, I didn't see any of that here. I think people are now just a bit used to it, which is sad, but it's good.
It was just weird because in level 3 we can still go shopping, so I'm not sure why there was the big panic. Like, and even in level 4 you can still go shopping, but not necessarily at a hardware store. But just a weird thing.
Yeah.
I guess they haven't really had a chance. The stores haven't had a chance to enact any,
They did. They had everything.
They?
From first thing in the morning, they had a limited number of people in the shop, and bloody queues everywhere, and you name it. It was in place overnight, so they were ready for it.
It's so funny to listen. Well, okay, let me retract that. It's not funny. It's certainly not funny. But it's
funny up in Townsville listening to all these stories.
Well, that's pretty much where I was going to go. It's here in Queensland, it's just a completely different, and particularly up here in the north where we are so far removed from it. We just it's just life as normal. But there's this horrible sense that because you dirty Victorians down there are, just a couple borders away, it's just a matter of time. And I wish we had, because I don't believe Queensland's gonna get spared from this, this run. But I wish they had acted quicker because the timing was horrific. Because Queensland had been doing so well, all the numbers were dropping off. We were saying, our borders are open. Come holiday with us. Come holiday in Queensland, as the cases were starting to rise. So, you'd almost think it's here. It just hasn't really been discovered yet.
Yeah, onwards and upwards.
Yeah, I think now we do evening records every time from now on. Maybe after this episode, every mention of COVID is like a drink.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Because
I can see you've got a glass of wine there, Brian.
Says the guy with the wine.
I've got a glass of wine. Yeah.
But, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a nice wee Pinot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not much of a wine drinker myself, but
No.
I would probably choose a Shiraz over everything else. That's the one that sort of sits with me the nicest.
Yeah. It's been a funny thing. Like, I'm definitely drinking way, way less, but I'm drinking far more often.
Okay.
It's like at the end of every day, having watched a COVID press conference, tried to make things in the backyard, tried to work out what's going to happen the next day. Yeah, I'm like, geez, I need a beer. But,
talking about making things, because that's what we do outside of talking about COVID.
Let's talk about making things.
Joey, you just finished that bookcase, which was who came up with that design?
Well, I'm glad that the clients had a really pretty clear idea of what they wanted, and this was an interesting kind of whole thing because typically, I think I've spoken about it before, I won't go to a client's house for like a consultation. It's 9.5 times out of 10, it's a complete waste of my half a day and nothing ever happens. If you just do like these quote unquote free site visit consultation things, it's a waste of time. In this case, the client rang me and specifically said, we want to do something really different and we can't really explain it to you, and he gave me some idea of what it was going to be, and I was straight away kind of like, okay, that's interesting. I think I'll try and come and have a look. So I ended up going to do a measure up on a Saturday morning, which I almost never do. And it just turned out that they had like some sketches and some pretty clear ideas of what they wanted to do with this kind of 8-meter wall section of their apartment. There's a 4th floor apartment. So I learned all about getting up and down lifts, Brian. So that was interesting. And Can
you describe, they weren't able to describe it. Can you describe it to people who can't see the pictures of it?
Yeah, so we've got a apartment wall. It's a dividing wall between one apartment and the next. So there's some giant beams hidden in the wall, so creating some kind of little step outs, if you will, with kind of plasterboarded over big beams that hold up the building. And so you've got about a straight section of wall. It's about 8 meters long from the front door of the apartment through to the kind of expansive window looking out over the city. And we start, as soon as you open the door, you have like a little bench to put your shoes on, put your shoes inside the bench, and then from there this kind of bookcase just kind of meanders along the wall, stepping up and down, and there's little pieces that kind of jut out to help support it, but also clients were quite specific about where they wanted these kind of little overlapping intersections of bookcase, and it just kind of grows along the wall a bit like a vine, I suppose, and ends up kind of wrapping around the TV. And that's kind of what they wanted, was something that was more sculptural but functional. And we added some LED lights, which he also had some very specific ideas about the LEDs actually pointing towards the back wall instead of pointing down on the books. So we had to do some interesting kind of techniques to hide the LEDs but have them facing backwards. And,
so how did you do that?
So to describe the bookcase, all the sections were 2 pieces of 18mm plywood with oak veneer. So we just straight up glued them all together, all these sections of plywood, and then we added a 36 by 36 solid oak edging to the front edge of it all, because the clients had also asked for a very heavy round over on the front edge of the bookcase. And so where that solid edging met the plywood, on the plywood we put a big bevel, kind of, how do you describe it? It's just a large bevel on the bottom edge of the plywood. And so then when we added the solid oak to the front, there was a little lip that hung down, and it's just enough that we could hide an 8mm strip of LED. And so the LEDs were stuck to the back edge of the front lipping, if that makes any sense.
Right, okay.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so for underneath, it looks a bit ugly, but on the lower shelves, which is only where the LEDs were, it's on the lower shelves, and you can't see anything. So, and so there's a few things. It was a steel stud wall with a double layer of fireproof jibboard or plasterboard. So finding the studs was a pain in the ass. Luckily, the client had a picture from the construction of the building.
Clever man.
And
They
it's like
always say you should do that.
Yeah.
When you renovate, take pictures so you know where they are.
And we could see, and the best thing was, leaning against the wall was a 1200 wide sliding door that was to go on the other side of the building. But we could use that as scale, like a workout where the studs started, and I could measure off part of the wall and get all the stud count. So we hit the stud almost every time, just off measure. So
you were trying to use just an electronic stud detector?
I did have one, and that actually worked as well. My initial plan, I bought a couple of rare earth magnets, the really strong.
That's exactly
strong
what I was
ones.
just about to suggest.
And I was like, I'm just going to slide this magnet along, and it's going to stick on every stud, but it didn't go
Wouldn't
through
stick?
the double layer of jib. So
Shit.
Interesting.
Yeah, I saw Raymond Valdez doing that. Ramon Valdez.
Yeah. I've done it before on a single layer of jib, and it's awesome because the round magnets have a hole in the middle, and you can just
so you
drill
just mark
through the
the
middle
center
of it, and
point.
that's where it is. Anyway, my stud finder did work to a degree, so that was pretty helpful. But so all these shelves are held onto the wall with a whole array of custom-made steel brackets, and
It's pretty intense, and you've hidden it. You've routed the thickness of the steel into the. It looks amazing.
So
I really thought it was a scale model when I saw it on your.
yeah. It's really a large installation, and originally I said to them, "Oh, you want this all floating?" Like they showed me the sketch, and I was like, "Oh, how the heck are we going to do this?" I said, "How thick do you want the shelves?" And he was like, "Oh, like 20 mil," and I was like, "Oh, we can't go that thin. How about 36? Like that's about the thinnest I think is possible."
Yeah.
Because we ended up using like 25 by 5 mil flat bar with a whole bunch of studs welded to it, sticking off the wall.
Yep.
And so because of the shape, if you guys have a look at my Instagram account, you can see all the ups and downs of the bookcase, and they're all there to give the bookcase some purchase so it doesn't just want to lever itself off the wall.
Ah, right,
And
okay.
so there's lots of bits that jut up and down, and they're literally there stopping it from falling off the wall, because otherwise there's not enough leverage.
Yeah, so if you just had one flat plane,
That's right.
they would just pivot
Even with the steel studs, we've only got 25 mil of kind of solid anchoring onto the jib board, and even then that's going to start to compress under load, so you've got to give it way more surface area. And so we added all these kind of ups and downs, and
Are those steel studs quite... Because the actual sheet that you're screwing into, it's not very thin, is it?
I know.
It's not very thick.
No, it's thin as. But luckily, like the kind of self-drilling, self-tapping screws hold super well into them when you actually get one.
Okay.
I mean, that's not coming out anytime soon. It's annoying. It's a little bit disconcerting because you think that the screw, only kind of binds for a few turns and then it's tight, and you think, oh, it's like if you were drilling into wood, you would think you had missed.
Like a 2 mil piece of wood, you've got a couple of turns of that thread and that's it. Yeah.
And that's it. So anyway, there was so many things that could have gone wrong. Every piece could have been I was pretty stressed. I was a bit stressed because I wanted to get that job done and get out of the city, and every piece just fitted like perfectly into place. There was 2 pieces I knew we had to trim on site. We trimmed them on site, and the rest of it just went in. So
Awesome.
it was a big sigh of relief, and it looks bloody awesome.
It does look awesome.
Do they own that flat?
Yeah, they bought the apartment.
So how does that work in terms... Because
I
here in
don't know.
Australia we use it's strata. If you own a property in a flat or unit.
Right.
would they need... No, I guess because they're not going...
No, just internal structural changes.
Building, you don't own the land.
Say again?
You own the part of the building, that's your property, but you don't own the land that it's built on.
Yeah, but I mean more like with those sort of apartments, because I looked into this before I bought my first place, which ended up being a house, because I looked at an apartment and I thought there's all these the strata rules are so...
What is that? I'm not familiar.
It's help me out, Brian. I can't remember what there's a community title,
it's a
strata title.
Body corporate.
Oh, right.
It basically says that if you want to change...
have any approved, like if you want to change the cladding to your balcony or change the windows,
it would be anything
or something
that's
like that.
Outside of the building.
Anything that's visible from the outside, or any structural changes to the internals of the apartment. But in terms of fit out, you can kind of do whatever you want, really.
Pretty much.
No, it looks really good, man. So how long were you working on that for?
Actually went together really quick. I'd say a total of 6 days, maybe.
That's pretty good.
Because really, it was just, I think we ordered 8 sheets of oak plywood and then just ripped it all down into strips, glued the heck out of this whole stack and just pressed it all onto my assembly table and just glued them all up in one day and just had this giant stack of plywood. And then spent a day...
So you didn't buy 36 mil plywood? You laminated it together 18. To make your own?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And what you can't see from the pictures is that if you're standing at the door looking at the lowest point, which is a little bench seat, all of the shelves taper from where you're standing out towards the window. There's a huge long taper along the whole, almost none of them are straight, and so we couldn't just cut a whole lot at the same width. We had to cut a whole lot at the largest size, and then form these tapers, and they all had to be exactly the right length. So every step and turn, they're all getting a little bigger as they go. They're getting wider, and so that we spent probably 3 days of the whole job just cutting these rips. These long rips and getting all the angles just right, and then we glued on all our front lipping onto that and did a whole bunch of finagling with the joints because we had these kind of T intersections with a round over on one of the sides.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
And that took a bit of working out. So I put miters wherever I could to avoid doing so much kind of coke cuts. But,
What was the rationale behind the width changes?
Just a different dimension, just to give it some more depth and a bit more feel, I think. It
must be quite trippy when you stand at the door and your perspective isn't doing what it should do and getting...
Yeah, it's like forced perspective.
Yeah, almost. It really is. I suppose it would be like kind of forced foreshortening, I guess you would call it, something like that. I never really thought about it like that. You would feel it more if there was a big bank of it and the whole wall kind of came in. But because it's just elements of the wall jutting out, I think it really does feel a bit more organic, I suppose, is what exactly what they were going for. So, yeah, really fun piece. So.
And the LEDs that you use, where did you get those from?
So I have a local company really close to me who supply everything you could imagine if you were in the cabinet making, furniture making game, and they do
for kitchens, hey?
Yeah, and they do a bunch of LEDs, and I just pick up whatever they happen to have in stock. It's a bit annoying because they change their lighting stock kind of frequently, and so you can't always rely on the same stuff being available, but it's good stuff, and it's made for cabinet makers and whoever to install. You don't have to be a Sparky, so it's good.
Does it come with the adhesive back?
Yeah, so you just buy there's all different types of the LED strip, and then it is all kind of compatible with their driver systems, and so depending on how long of LED strip you buy, you just buy the appropriate driver to power that, and then you can buy a range of different switches to go with that. So you just kind of plug it all together depending on what you want to do.
And then it plugs into a plug socket.
You just plug it into the normal power socket, which converts it down to 12 volts. And
I've always had such bad luck with those sticky backs. The LEDs always pull away from the walls. That's why I ask if you had some.
Okay. Yeah, I've never had them really, unless the cables are pulling on them. They can start to, over time, to eventually pull that where the cable joins on to the LED strip. But generally, I find they stay put. So yeah, that was a fun job. Robin, you are, by the looks, working or just about finished this vanity that we talked about at some point.
Yeah, this super simple vanity, which has taken me about 7 or 8 weeks to get to this point, just because it's been so busy with work. Yeah, so everything's done. I did that the last time we talked off air. We were talking about this front piece. The front part of the vanity is a 120 mil wide board that it has been doweled into the side panels, and we talked about how could I have done that with solid wood instead of the plywood that I used, because I was worried about the movement. And yeah, I thought about that for a couple of days after the show, and I'm still happy that I did the plywood, but I don't feel like I've had the question answered.
Right.
I still don't know what I would do if I had to do it again. But yeah, so that's all been put in. The front face that covers it has been finished. Everything's drying now. I'm on the second coat. I'm using the floor.
CFP
poly
floor.
Amazing stuff, hey?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Really, really enjoy working with it. And it's funny, we were talking about the hard wax oils the other day. This is so much better. Goes on so much easier. Brian, you mentioned the climate. I reckon that must be it.
I think it must be.
Because it
must be.
Flows so much nicer. And I'm using a roller, just putting it on with a normal microfiber roller, and works so much better. This was actually the first project that I've done where I pre-finished all the boards. Well, except the outside panels, the outside of the panels, but all the internals, pre-finished everything. And I think I'll probably try and do this again where I can. Because you can lay everything flat, finish
so
it
much easier.
Perfectly, and then obviously the problem is then you've just got to be so careful with everything. But the level of finish you can get is just massively superior.
Yeah, I am actually having, I'm going to, so I think I was meant to talk about this earlier on, but we diverted. So at the moment, I'm making the sideboard, which is oak. The lady wants a black finish. And I didn't even think about using, the old vinegar and steel wool to like blacken the oak. I had about a half a litre of black dye stain, and I just started staining that, and I was like, yeah, it's black, but it's kind of always goes a bit blue-black when I use that particular dye stain. And then after I put the first coat of stain on, I thought, why don't I try just putting the vinegar steel wool solution on top, and it will just darken, which it did. It darkened everything up, but the bloody grain raised so badly on it. And I was like, what do I do? Because now I've got to sand it off again. And so I sanded it, which took a lot of the blackness away. And so then I put more vinegar and steel wool on, which made it black again. But the grain raised again.
Raised the grain again.
And so I'm like, and so then I think I sanded it again, put more stain on top of that, and it's nice and black. And
I was like, by this stage, no wonder.
I'm like, so now, but it's still not quite smooth enough. And so I'm like, I need some finish on there that I can kind of seal it in, and then kind of maybe that's going to help with sanding it. So I had this sample can of Osmo graphite color. So it's not perfect, but it's dark. It's not clear. And I thought maybe adding some kind of darker finish on top of all this other black is going to even help. And it kind of does look nice. I don't mind the slight graphite grey coming through. It actually makes an interesting kind of texture, but it feels like crap. And it's still rough. And if I don't like how it feels or is looking. There's no sheen to it. I'm not sure why it's not performing like the other Osmo I've used, where I got such a nice gloss shine from it. So
could you then apply a normal coat of Osmo over the top of it?
Yeah, possibly. I hadn't thought about that. So my plan tomorrow is just to put water-based poly on top of that, now that it's all dry, and actually build up a sheen and probably get a bit more depth with all those layers that I've got going on. Hopefully I'll get, more of a satin, smooth feel from it.
It is always the issue. Like, black is never black.
Yeah.
Black is either brown or it's blue-black.
Yeah.
And yeah, the ebonizing is great, but it definitely lifts the grain.
I'm not sure how to.
I think it's all about a combination of the two. I think the best way is to build up the first few coats with the ebonizing solution and maybe tea or the what was it that Laura was talking about? The powdered
tannin.
Powdered tannins, something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And then I don't know. For me, I reckon the India ink as a final rub gives a really nice finish. It dries so quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only way I can achieve a black that I really, really like.
And do you find so I use this Brywax dye stain, and I've been using it since I was like 14, and it's bloody awesome stuff.
Tin must be pretty old by now.
Yeah. Yes, that particular can is almost dry. So it's very similar, I think, probably to, I've used a little bit of India ink. So the Brywax stuff is a methylated spirits based dye, and it dries, like shellac in about
minutes.
3 seconds. Like it's just gone, flashed off. By the time you've wiped that piece down, it's dry. And so with the dye stain, with the Brywax, you do lose some of that stain when you apply the first coat of finish. Right, okay. It kind of comes back off with whatever solution you're applying to it. So whether it's the polyurethane or an Osmo type oil, it's going to take some of that away. So the trick is to apply it very quickly and don't rub it around too much. Just get it on there and let it dry and seal in the color. Do you find you get any color removal with the India ink, or is it just
no?
Stays?
I find usually I let it maybe dry for at least a few hours, even though it's like you said, it's touch dry in seconds and it's bone dry within minutes. Yeah. But I'll generally let it dry for a few hours and then put Osmo on and just roll it on. And I don't think I've had any issues where the black has sort of come back out or.
Oh, that's good. So I think maybe it's just this product with the being a dye stain rather than an ink. It just wants to lift a little bit with any kind of thinner chemical that happens to be in whatever clear coat you're using. I think it just lifts it slightly.
The India ink's pretty good, and it's not super expensive, and it goes a really long way. Compared to like if you're buying a dedicated black Osmo or something like that, and you're paying $300 a can versus paying $50 for the India ink, and then just sticking with your normal Osmo.
India ink, I've never heard of it before. Where do you get it from?
It's like stamp ink.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a trick that a lot of wood turners use it for doing, like carved bowls and things like that to turn those black.
And where do you get it from?
So you can put it on
shops for small amounts.
Yeah, art supply shops, but when they're turning with it, they can sort of buff it and apply it at the same time, and that's what they like it gives a really nice luster.
Robin, in the old days when you had a library and the librarian would stamp your book and she'd have that pad which you'd grab a stamp, and that pad would dry out every now and then, and so they've got to pour more ink into it, and that you buy a little bottle of India ink, and they would use it for printing books and stuff. Like professional printers would use it as like your black type ink on whatever it happened to be in the old days. And so generally I've only ever seen it in like very small bottles, like maybe 50 ml or 100 ml if you're lucky. I'm not sure if you can get bigger
amounts. There's an art supply shop in Melbourne that sells half litres for about $60, I think.
Oh, that's good.
I think it's
Fine.
about $60. I haven't bought it in, like, I've had it for maybe 3 years and I'm halfway down it.
How do you apply it? Is it with just a rag?
Yeah, just a rag. I put it on with a roller as well, actually. I think if it's warm, I'll tend to apply it with a roller because it is going off so quickly that you need to cover the surface to try to keep a wet edge on it. But yeah, normally I'll just buff it in with a rag. And number one tip, wear gloves if you ever want to be allowed in your house again by your wife.
I can imagine.
Because that stuff gets into your fingers and it will not come out.
No.
Well, you just said a half-litre tin of it, and I just thought that's a terrible idea. Why would they ship it in that amount?
Yeah, it's good stuff. I think it's Speedball Ink is the brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
So,
interesting.
yeah.
All right, I reckon we'll leave it there for tonight. Are you guys all right with that?
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, so
Every future mention of COVID is one drink, okay, guys?
That's it. I have my beer ready next week.
I'll have a
Good
tally
stuff.
at least. I'll take a tally of it, and then I'll maybe do the drinks afterwards.
All right, so to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please go ahead and give it a rating on iTunes. That really does help us out. The Shop Stool Podcast is available on iTunes and most other podcast apps. My name is Robin Lewis. Joey and Brian, thanks very much for hanging out. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you in the next show.
See you guys.
See you guys.